15 years after my son died in a construction site accident, I still believed something was wrong. Everyone told me, it was just an accident, let the past go. But his final phone call told me otherwise. So I gave up my identity as a powerful chairman and took a job as a night security guard at a new construction site on the same street where my son drew his last breath. During my first shift, an old worker stared at me and whispered, "I saw something that night, something they never wanted anyone to know." That one sentence opened the door to a secret buried for 15 years. Thank you for being here on Revenge. Dad, it means more than you know. Tell me in the comments, what city or country are you joining us from today? Let's see how far this story travels. Some elements of this story are fictional, included for entertainment and educational purposes. Names and settings are not drawn from reality, but the truth behind the message is. The man staring back at me from the mirror was a stranger. I had spent 35 years building Carter Development Group from a single construction trailer in the San Fernando Valley into one of the most recognized names in Los Angeles real estate. I had shaken hands with mayors, signed contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and watched my company's name go up on buildings that would outlast me by a century. But tonight, in a $79 motel room off Cesar Chavez Avenue in East Los Angeles, Thomas Carter did not exist. The man in the mirror had shorter hair, grayer than I remembered when I last looked this closely. No suit, no cufflinks. A faded gray security guard uniform that smelled faintly of the previous owner's cigarettes. On the bathroom counter beside the sink sat my Rolex Submariner, the one Margaret had given me on our 20th anniversary, and next to it a plastic Casio watch I had bought at a Walgreens 3 blocks away for $19.47. My hand hovered over the Rolex for a long moment. Then I picked up the Casio and fastened it around my wrist. The face looking back at me from the mirror did not flinch. But deep in my chest behind my ribs, something tightened so hard I had to grip the edge of the sink to keep steady. My knuckles went white against the porcelain. 15 years. 15 years, I had asked myself the same question every single morning when I woke up. Every board meeting I sat through. Every contract I signed. Every night I lay in that enormous house in Hancock Park with nothing but the sound of the air conditioning and the memory of a phone call I could never unhear. His voice had been tight with urgency, almost breathless like he had been running. Dad, listen to me. I found something. Something is very wrong with this project, and I think..." And then the line went dead. I had called back 17 times in the next 4 minutes, each time straight to voicemail. His voice on the recording, calm, professional, nothing like the voice I had just heard telling callers to leave a message, and he would return their call at his earliest convenience. Alex Carter never returned that call. By the time I reached the construction site on Figueroa Street, there were already 2 police cruisers and an ambulance. A young officer with a clipboard had put his hand on my arm and said words that I have never been able to organize into a sentence that makes sense. Words like accident and equipment failure, and "I'm so sorry, sir, and is there someone we can call?" I remembered the rain. I remembered Emily standing 30 feet away from me at the funeral, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her own body together. Her eyes fixed on some point above the casket that I could never identify. She never looked at me, not once. I had thought at the time that she was simply too broken to make eye contact with anyone. I understood now that it was something else entirely. The official investigation report sat in a manila folder in my briefcase, the same copy I had read so many times that the paper had gone soft at the fold lines. 2 investigators from the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety. 14 pages. The conclusion printed in plain language at the bottom of page 12. Equipment failure. No evidence of criminal negligence. Case closed. I had read those 4 words 10,000 times, and 10,000 times my stomach had turned over with the same cold certainty. My son did not die because of the equipment failure. For 15 years I had investigated quietly, carefully, the way I had always approached problems that required patience rather than speed. I had hired private investigators. I had requested documents through attorneys. I had compared personnel records and cross-referenced subcontractor payments until my eyes ached. Nothing. Every trail went cold within weeks. Until 3 months ago, when my director of engineering placed a report on my desk with a troubled expression and said, "Sir, you need to look at this." Harrison Global Construction had broken ground on a 40-story mixed-use tower in Midtown Manhattan. The structural specifications filed with the New York City Department of Buildings were publicly available as they always are in New York, standard procedure. My director had printed the relevant sections and placed them side by side with internal documents from a Carter Development Research project that Alex had been leading in 2009, a proprietary method for reinforced concrete core construction that reduced material costs by 11% while exceeding California seismic code requirements. Alex had spent 18 months developing it. We had never filed for a patent because we had never published the method publicly. The documents were not similar, they were identical. Harrison Global Construction was run by a man named Victor Harrison. I had known Victor for 25 years, first as a business associate, then as a competitor. A well-dressed man with a firm handshake and a philanthropist's reputation. The kind of man who got his photograph taken at charity galas and spoke at industry conferences about ethics in construction. I had stared at those two documents for a long time. Then I called my attorney and told him I would be taking an indefinite medical leave of absence. I told the board it was my heart. It was not entirely a lie. I reached up and turned off the bathroom light. In the dark, I picked up the phone from the counter and looked at the last photograph I had of Alex. He was 30 years old in the picture, standing on a job site in Burbank, wearing a hard hat and grinning at the camera with the easy confidence of a man who believed that doing the right thing was always worth the trouble. My throat locked up so hard, it felt like something had been driven into my chest. "I'm going to find out what happened," I told the photograph. My voice came out rougher than I expected, scraped raw in a way I had not heard from myself in years. "I promise you, son, I am going to find out." I slid the phone into the breast pocket of the security guard uniform directly over my heart. Tom Walker, security officer, badge number 447, picked up his flashlight from the nightstand and walked out of room 14 of the East Side Budget Inn. Outside, the October air was cool and smelled of exhaust and dried leaves. The construction site on Figueroa was a 12-minute drive. I had timed it twice yesterday while doing reconnaissance. I had been many things in my life: a laborer, an entrepreneur, a widower, a father. Tonight I was going to be something different. I was going to be invisible. And in the loading area near the south entrance of the construction site, a heavy-set man with calloused hands and a thermos of coffee was watching the new security officer walk toward the gate with an expression I could not yet read. He had not looked away since I stepped out of my truck. He was still watching me when I reached the gate. Up close, he was older than I had first estimated, mid-60s at least, with a face that looked like it had been left out in the California sun for several decades too long. Deep lines carved from the corners of his eyes down to his jaw. Hands so calloused they looked like they had been resurfaced with sandpaper. He was a big man, broad through the shoulders, though age had rounded what had once probably been a powerful frame. He held a dented steel thermos in one hand and a clipboard in the other, and he was looking at me with an expression I had seen before, the particular squint of a man trying to place a face he almost recognized. I kept my own expression neutral and professional. "Tom Walker," I said, extending my hand. "New overnight security, first shift." He shook it. His grip was firm and unhurried, the handshake of a man who had nothing to prove. "Frank Delgado," he said. "I do site prep for the morning crew. Get here around 2-3 in the morning, quieter that way." He tilted his head slightly still, studying me. "You done security work before?" "Some," I said, which was technically true if you counted 35 years of securing a company worth $400 million. Frank nodded slowly as though he had decided something, but was not yet ready to share what it was. He pushed the gate open and stepped aside to let me through. "I'll walk you through the south perimeter," he said. "Night manager usually skips it. Lot of loose material back there. Easy to miss something if you don't know where to look." I followed him into the site. The construction project was a mid-rise residential building, 12 floors, steel frame, still in the concrete phase. Temporary lighting on tall poles threw yellow light across the yard in uneven patches, leaving long shadows between equipment and material stacks. The smell was familiar in a way that hit me somewhere behind the sternum. Wet concrete, diesel fuel, metal shavings. The smell of every job site I had ever walked in, 35 years of building things. The smell of the site on Figueroa Street on the night of November 14th, 2009. I pressed my back teeth together hard and kept walking. Frank moved through the yard with the easy familiarity of a man who had spent more of his life on construction sites than off them. He pointed out a section of loose rebar near the south fence, a drainage problem along the eastern wall, a compressor unit that had been leaking hydraulic fluid for 3 days and still hadn't been logged. "And you notice things," I said. 30 years in this business," Frank said without looking at me. "You start seeing what other people stop seeing." We stopped near the old storage building at the back of the lot, a cinder block structure with a corrugated metal roof that looked like it predated the current project by at least 2 decades. Frank leaned against the wall beside the door and unscrewed his thermos. "Coffee," he offered. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it more than he knew. He poured a cup into the thermos cap and handed it to me. We stood there in the yellow half-light, and for a moment, the only sounds were the distant hum of the freeway and the occasional metallic pop of the temporary lighting structures cooling in the night air. Then Frank said without any particular preamble, "You ever meet a man named Alex Carter?" The coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I held myself very still, the kind of stillness that costs something that requires every muscle in your body to be given a direct order and expected to obey it. My heart had slammed against my ribs so hard I was certain Frank could hear it. "The name sounds familiar," I said carefully. "Why?" Frank looked out across the yard. His jaw worked for a moment like he was chewing on something tough. "Because you've got his eyes," he said. "Same way of looking at things, like you're measuring everything you see and keeping score." He took a long pull from his thermos. "I worked a job 15 years ago. Big project, downtown. Carter Development Group. You heard of them?" "I've heard the name," I said. "Alex Carter was the lead safety engineer on that project." Frank's voice had dropped a register, gone quieter and rougher, at the same time the way voices do when they are carrying weight they have been carrying for a long time. Smart kid, serious. The kind of engineer who actually walked the site instead of sitting in a trailer, signing off on paperwork he hadn't read. He paused. "He died on that job. November of '09. They called it an equipment failure. My chest felt like someone had reached inside it and was slowly making a fist around everything in there. I breathed in through my nose, slow, and controlled the way I had learned to breathe at Margaret's bedside in her last weeks, when I could not afford to fall apart in front of her. "That must have been hard," I said. "Losing a colleague like that." Frank made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "He wasn't my colleague exactly. I was working overnight security on that site, company called Westfield Protective Services." His eyes moved to me, then direct and steady. "You want to know something funny about Westfield Protective Services? I looked them up a few years back. Curiosity, you know how it is. Turned out they were a subsidiary, shell company really, owned by a holding group called Pacific Meridian Capital." He paused. Pacific Meridian Capital was controlled by a man named Victor Harrison. Something cold moved through me that had nothing to do with the October air. Frank's voice stayed level and quiet. "I didn't know that when I took the job. I just needed the work. My wife had just had surgery and we needed the income. Westfield hired me for overnight security on that site, same as you, Tom." He looked down at his thermos. "I've thought about that a lot over the years. The fact that the same man who owned the company that put me on that site is the same man whose people I believe put Alex Carter in the ground." My throat had gone so tight I could barely push words through it. "Why do you say that?" Frank set his thermos down on a nearby crate. He straightened up and looked at me directly, and in his eyes I saw something that had been sitting there a long time. Not grief exactly, but the particular exhaustion of a man who has been carrying a truth that nobody wanted to hear. "Because at 11:45 on the night of November 13th, I saw a man on the upper platform of that site replacing the safety cable on the main lift, in the dark, with no log entry, no authorization paperwork." Frank's voice tightened each word, coming out harder than the last. "I reported it to my site supervisor first thing the next morning. Showed him my incident log. You know what he told me?" "What?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "He told me I must have been confused, that I probably saw a maintenance crew that had been properly authorized and I just hadn't been informed." Frank's jaw muscles worked hard. 3 days later, I was terminated. No reason given, just a check for 2 weeks severance and a thank you for your service. He picked up his thermos again and turned it slowly in his hands. The day after I was fired, the accident happened. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full crowded with 15 years of questions and answers that had come too late and grief that had never once let me sleep a full night without waking to the sound of a phone line going dead. I turned away from Frank on the pretext of looking out across the south yard. My eyes were burning in a way I had not expected, and I needed a moment that he could not see. "That storage building," I said when I trusted my voice again. I nodded toward the cinder block structure. "Has it been here long?" Frank glanced at it. "Since before I started here. Old foundation from some project that got abandoned back in '09, the way I heard it. Landlord converted it to storage, eventually rented the whole lot to this developer." He shrugged. "I use it for my equipment. Walls are thick at least. Keeps things dry." I looked at the building for a moment, longer than was natural. Then I finished my coffee, handed the thermos cap back to Frank, and started my first patrol of the perimeter. Behind me, I heard him murmur something too low to catch clearly. But I thought, and I could not be certain that what he said was, "Same eyes, exactly the same." I sat in the parking lot of a Ralph's supermarket on First Street for 40 minutes after my shift ended with the engine running and the heater on low and my phone pressed against my ear. My assistant at Carter Development, a methodical man named Gerald, who had worked for me for 19 years and understood without being told that certain requests required absolute discretion, answered on the second ring despite the early hour. "I need everything you can find on Emily Carter," I said. "Current address, employment finances, whatever is publicly accessible, and I need her maiden name confirmed." Gerald did not ask why. He never did. "I'll have something for you within the hour," he said and hung up. I sat with the phone in my lap and watched a grocery delivery truck back slowly into the loading dock across the parking lot. The driver climbed down from the cab, stretched his back with both hands pressed into his lower spine, and began unloading boxes with the unhurried efficiency of a man who had done this particular thing so many thousands of times that his body did it without consulting his mind. I understood that feeling. Gerald called back in 53 minutes. "Emily Carter, Leigh Wilson," he said. "Licensed architect, sole proprietorship, registered in San Francisco. Current address in the Noe Valley neighborhood. Financially stable, modest income, no significant debt." A brief pause. "Thomas. Wilson is her maiden name. Her father was Richard Wilson." The phone nearly slipped out of my hand. I caught it against my thigh, my fingers suddenly clumsy and uncooperative, my whole arm gone strange and heavy in a way that had nothing to do with fatigue. The name Richard Wilson hit me somewhere in the center of my chest, like a demolition hammer, clean and absolute and devastating. Richard Wilson. My CFO for 11 years. The man who had sat across from me at the conference table through every major decision Carter Development had ever made. The man who had been at my house for Christmas dinner 6 times. Who had held my hand in the hospital corridor the night Margaret's diagnosis came back, and I could not find the words for what I was feeling. The man I had fired. 15 years ago, an audit had produced documentation showing what appeared to be a systematic pattern of financial misappropriation, funds redirected from project accounts into a series of third-party shell companies. The amounts were significant. The paper trail had been thorough and internally consistent. 2 outside forensic accounting firms had reviewed the evidence and reached the same conclusion. I had called Richard into my office on a Thursday morning in September of 2009. I had slid the audit report across the desk. I had watched his face go through a sequence of expressions I had never seen on it before. Confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked like a man watching the ground disappear from beneath his feet. "Thomas," he had said. "Thomas, listen to me. I did not do this." "Richard, I am telling you." His voice had broken on the last word, cracked right down the middle in a way I had never heard from him in 11 years. "Someone built this. Someone constructed this paper trail, and I am telling you it is not real." I had believed the accountants. I had been so certain. The evidence had been so complete. Richard Wilson had been escorted from the building by 2 members of our security team on a Friday afternoon. He had not contested the termination. He had not filed a lawsuit. He had simply gone home. He had died 11 months later. His doctor had listed the cause as cardiac failure. His daughter, a young woman I had met perhaps 3 times, at company events, quiet and dark-haired and serious, had not attended the small industry memorial we held for him. I had thought at the time that she was simply too grief-stricken. She had been 24 years old when her father died, alone, disgraced his reputation, destroyed. And 18 months later, she had married my son. I pressed my fist against my mouth so hard I could feel my teeth through my knuckles. My eyes burned with a heat that started somewhere at the back of my skull and push forward until I had to tip my head back against the headrest and breathe through my nose in long, deliberate pulls to keep from coming apart completely in a Ralph's parking lot at 7 in the morning. Emily had known who Alex was when they met. She had walked into my family with her father's name buried under her married name and a reason to want something from us that I could not yet fully see the shape of. I sat with that for a long time. Then I started the truck and drove to the LAPD Hollenbeck Division on 1st Street. Detective Sarah Bennett was not what I had expected, though I could not have said precisely what I had expected. She was in her early 40s, compact and precise in her movements with close-cropped dark hair and the kind of steady, evaluating eyes that reminded me of the best engineers I had ever employed, people who looked at a structure and immediately began calculating where the stress points were. She was at her desk when the front officer brought me back, reviewing a thick folder with a red pen in her hand, and she looked up at me with an expression that did not change, but somehow managed to sharpen. "Mr. Walker," she said. She did not stand, but she gestured to the chair across from her desk with the red pen. "You said you had information about a construction accident, November 2009. "That's right," I said. I sat down and placed the envelope on her desk, documents showing the parallel between Carter Development's proprietary construction specifications and the Harrison Global filing with the New York City Department of Buildings. "I'd like you to look at these." Sarah Bennett picked up the envelope, opened it, and read. She did not rush. She went through each page with the same careful attention she had been giving her folder, and I watched her face and saw the moment something changed in it, a slight tightening around her eyes, a stillness that was different from the stillness before. "Where did you get these?" she asked. "The Harrison Global documents are publicly filed with the New York City Department of Buildings," I said. "Public record. And the Carter Development documents?" I held her gaze. "I have access to them." Sarah Bennett set the papers down on her desk and looked at me for a long moment with those precise, calculating eyes. Then she leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "You're not a construction worker," she said. It was not a question. "And you're not here by accident." My jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" "It might," she said, "depending on what you're asking me to do." She tapped the papers with one finger. "I worked the periphery of the Carter site accident in '09. I was a junior detective then. The case was classified as accidental death equipment failure and closed within 6 weeks. She paused. I never thought 6 weeks was enough time. Something shifted in my chest. Not relief exactly, but the sensation of finding solid ground after a long time of not being certain whether the surface beneath you would hold. "Then help me give you a reason to open it again," I said. Sarah Bennett picked up the papers once more. "Bring me something real, Mr. Walker," she said. "Bring me something I can take to a judge, and I'll help you." I stood to leave. Behind me, she said quietly, "Whoever you are, be careful. The people who closed that case in 6 weeks had reasons to close it fast." I was almost at the door when my phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. A text message from an unknown number, 7 words. "Stop digging, old man. You don't know what you're walking into." I read it twice. Then I deleted it and walked out into the morning sun. I had been warned before, by accountants, by attorneys, by an industry that had spent 15 years telling me that accidents happen and grief distorts judgment, and perhaps it was time to let go. I was still here. The record storage floor of the Carter Development Group headquarters building on Wilshire Boulevard occupied the entire basement level, 2,000 square feet of metal shelving, climate-controlled air, and 35 years of paper documentation that nobody had looked at in a very long time. I had called ahead to the building manager using Gerald's extension, identified myself as a records clerk conducting an internal audit, and been given a temporary access card without question. The woman at the front desk had not looked up from her monitor when I walked through the lobby in my security guard uniform. Nobody noticed the man in the gray uniform heading for the elevator. Nobody ever noticed the man in the gray uniform. I had built this building. I had selected, the architect approved the lobby design, signed the occupancy permit. And I walked through it today as invisible as the cleaning crew. The storage floor was exactly as I remembered it, from the one time I had come down here years ago to locate a specific contract document, rows of gray metal shelving stretching back into the fluorescent-lit distance, each shelf labeled with year ranges and project codes in faded marker. The air smelled of old paper and the particular staleness of a room that was temperature regulated but never truly breathed. I found the section marked Executive Correspondence 2009 in the third row from the back. There were 4 archive boxes. I pulled them all and set them on the long work table in the center of the room, and I began going through them the way I had learned to go through evidence over 15 years of quiet investigation, methodically, without rushing reading every label before opening anything. The third box was where I found it. It was a standard business envelope, white, slightly yellowed at the edges with age. It had been addressed by hand to Thomas Carter Personal and Confidential at the Wilshire Boulevard office address. The return address in the upper left corner was a residential street in Pasadena that I recognized immediately Richard Wilson's home address. The postmark date was October 14, 2009. Richard had died on October 29th, 15 days after mailing this. The envelope had never been opened. My hands had started shaking before I was fully aware of it. A fine, uncontrollable tremor that moved from my fingers up through my wrists and into my forearms. The kind of shaking that has nothing to do with cold or fatigue and everything to do with the body registering something the mind has not yet caught up with. I pressed both palms flat on the table and leaned my weight onto them and breathed. The envelope would have come through the executive correspondence intake process, sorted by Martin Shaw's administrative team on the 4th floor, logged and routed to the appropriate recipient. Martin Shaw, as Executive Vice President of Operations, had overseen all incoming correspondence to senior leadership as part of a consolidation of administrative functions he had proposed and implemented in early 2008. A proposal I had approved without hesitation, because Martin had always been efficient and thorough, and I had trusted him without reservation for 12 years. I picked up the envelope and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Richard's handwriting, I would have known it anywhere, that precise, slightly backward-leaning script he had developed from years of annotating financial documents in the margins. The letter was dated October 13th. Thomas, it began, I know you won't believe this is real. I know what the audit showed you and I know how it looks. I'm not writing to argue with you about the evidence because I understand you had no choice but to act on what was in front of you. I'm writing because I need you to know one name, Victor Harrison. Look at the account numbers in the audit report, specifically the third-party transfers flagged in the Figueroa Street project budget. Then look at Pacific Meridian Capital. That's where the money went. I didn't send it there, but I know who did. I should have come to you sooner. I was afraid of what would happen if I did. I'm more afraid now of what will happen if I don't. Whatever happens to me, please look into this. For Alex's sake, if not for mine. Your friend always, Richard. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down on the metal folding chair beside the work table and pressed the letter against my chest with both hands and felt something move through me that I had no clean word for. It was grief and rage and a sorrow so deep and specific that it had its own texture, its own weight, different from any grief I had carried before. Richard had known. He had known who was behind it, and he had tried to tell me, and the letter had sat in a box in this basement for 15 years because Martin Shaw had routed it into an archive instead of onto my desk. I do not know how long I sat there, long enough for the fluorescent light above me to flicker twice, long enough for the trembling in my hands to move up into my chest and settle there, like something that intended to stay. When I finally stood up, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the inside pocket of my uniform jacket directly against my ribs. I drove to Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the late afternoon light. Richard's grave was in a quiet section near the eastern boundary of the cemetery, beneath an old pepper tree that cast a long, shifting shadow across the headstone in the low October sun. The grave was well tended. Someone still came and brought flowers. I did not know who. I had not known Richard had anyone left. I stood in front of the headstone for a long time. Richard James Wilson, beloved father. 1954 to 2009. You tried to tell me, I said. My voice came out steadier than I had expected, but there was something wrong with the quality of it, too flat, too careful, the voice of a man holding himself together through an act of sustained will. You tried to warn me, and I never got the letter, and I am so sorry, Richard. I am so sorry I believed them instead of you. The pepper tree moved in the afternoon wind. A mockingbird called twice from somewhere above me and went quiet. I know who did this now, I said. I know what he took from you, and I know what he took from Alex. My throat locked around the last word, and I had to stop and press the back of my hand hard against my mouth for a moment before I could continue. I am going to finish what Alex started. I promise you both that. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out the letter. I held it for a moment, this piece of paper that had waited 15 years in a basement box to be read this last attempt by a good man to reach his friend before it was too late. Then, I placed it back over my heart. I was walking back toward the parking lot when my phone rang. The screen showed Frank Delgado the number he had given me at the end of my shift that morning, when he had pressed a scrap of paper into my hand and said, "Call me if you need anything," in the quiet way of a man who understood that some things could not be said in front of other people. I answered immediately. Frank's voice on the line was different from the measured, deliberate voice I had heard at 2 a.m. on the construction site. This voice was tight and slightly elevated, the voice of a man working hard to keep something controlled. "Tom," he said, "I need you to come to my place, right now if you can." A pause short and dense with something unspoken. "I was moving some equipment in the back storage room this afternoon. Part of the wall came away, old plaster been crumbling for months." Another pause. "There's something behind it. A metal box. Tom, there's a name written on it." His breath came through the phone, rough and unsteady. "The name on the box is Alex Carter." The cemetery parking lot was very quiet around me. Somewhere in my chest, my heart had stopped behaving like a heart and started behaving like something that was trying to break out of the space it had been assigned. "Don't touch it," I said. "Don't move it. I'm on my way." I drove too fast. Not recklessly, I was not a reckless man, but faster than I had driven in years, pushing the old truck through the evening traffic on the 10 freeway, with both hands tight on the wheel and my jaw set so hard my back teeth ached. I ran a yellow light on Cesar Chavez that was closer to red than yellow, and I did not notice until I was through the intersection. Frank's place was a 10-minute drive from the cemetery on a normal evening. I made it in 6. The address he had given me was on a dead-end street off Lorena, a block of small industrial lots that had been rezoned for mixed use sometime in the 90s, and never quite made up its mind what it wanted to become. Frank's rental was the last structure on the left, a cinder block building with a corrugated metal roof, the kind of place that had been built to store something practical, and had ended up storing everything and nothing. A single bulb burned above the side door, throwing a yellow circle of light onto the cracked asphalt. Frank was waiting outside. He had his arms crossed over his chest and his thermos in one hand, and when my headlights swept across him, I could see that his face had gone a particular shade of pale, that I recognized the color of a man who has turned something over in his mind for the past hour and still cannot find a place to put it. He did not say anything when I climbed out of the truck. He just turned and walked to the side door and pushed it open, and I followed him inside. The storage room at the back of the building was separated from the main space by a half wall of old lumber. Frank had clearly been moving equipment. A rolling toolbox, 2 heavy-duty cable reels, and a stack of concrete forms had been shifted to one side of the room, leaving a clear path to the far wall. At the base of the wall, a section of old plaster had given way, exposing the cinder block beneath. The plaster debris was still on the floor, in chunks and dust, and there recessed perhaps 8 inches into a space between 2 cinder blocks, where a third block should have been, was a metal box approximately the size of a large hardcover book. I crouched down in front of it. The box was a gray metal document case, the kind sold in office supply stores for fireproof document storage. It was secured with a small combination lock, and written across the top, face in black, permanent marker in handwriting I would have recognized in complete darkness, were 2 words. Alex Carter. My son had written his own name on it. My knees hit the concrete floor before I was aware of having decided to kneel. The impact sent a jolt up through both legs that I registered distantly, the way you register pain when something else is taking up most of your attention. I reached out and placed my right hand flat on top of the box, not to open it, not yet, just to touch the surface that his hands had touched. The metal was cold. Whatever warmth it might once have held from the hands that had placed it here had long since surrendered to 15 years of California nights, cycling through the cinder block walls. "I found the combination written on the back," Frank said quietly from behind me. He held out a folded piece of paper. "Taped to the underside of the box. I didn't look inside. I swear to you, Tom, I didn't open it." I took the paper. The combination was written in the same black marker, 3 numbers each circled separately. Alex had made it easy to find because he had planned for someone specific to find it. He had planned for me. The lock opened on the first try. Inside the box were 3 items: a standard black composition notebook, a USB drive taped to the inside lid with a strip of electrical tape and a manila folder containing perhaps 30 pages of handwritten notes and printed documents, the edges slightly soft with age. I lifted the composition notebook out first. Alex had used it as an engineering log, the early pages covered in technical notations, material specifications, measurements, dates. I turned through them carefully, reading enough to understand what I was holding. This was not a personal diary. This was a documented investigation. Page by page, in Alex's precise, methodical handwriting, he had recorded every anomaly he had discovered on the Figueroa Street project. Substituted materials, falsified inspection certificates, payments routed through subcontractors to shell entities. A pattern of systematic fraud that had been built into the project from the ground up. My son had found all of it. He had found it and documented it with the thoroughness of an engineer who understood that without a complete record, the truth could be made to disappear. I turned to the last entry. It was dated November the 13th, 2009, the night before he died. The handwriting on that final page was slightly different from the rest, not less controlled, but more urgent. The letters pressed harder into the paper, as though the pen had been moving faster than usual. I have to move this tonight. If something happens to me before I can get this to Dad, I need it to be somewhere they won't find it. The wall cavity in the East LA storage unit, the old Figueroa overflow lot. Nobody goes back there. I have maybe 2 hours before the site check. Then below that, separated by a space as though he had put the pen down and picked it up again. The traitor is not outside the company. Someone with internal access helped them do this. I don't know who yet. I think I'm close to knowing. Dad, if you ever find this, I love you, and I'm sorry I couldn't finish what I started. The words blurred. I had told myself in the 15 years since the cemetery and the rain and the 2 detectives with their clipboards that I had already done my grieving, that I had learned to carry the weight of it in a way that did not break me, that I had found a form of equilibrium that allowed me to function, to run the company, to survive. I had been wrong about that. The grief that moved through me in that storage room in East Los Angeles was not the grief I had carried for 15 years. It was something new, or something very old that had been waiting behind the version I had been permitted to feel until now. It came up from somewhere below my sternum and moved outward through my entire body, and my vision went completely, and I pressed the back of my wrist against my mouth and made a sound I did not recognize as coming from myself. My son had been alone in this building in the dark, writing those words by flashlight or phone light, hiding this box in a wall knowing that someone was coming. He had been 32 years old. He had been thinking about me. Frank Delgado did not say a word. He turned around and walked back out to the main room of the building and pulled the door mostly closed behind him. He gave me the only thing he could give me, which was the privacy of not being watched. I do not know how long I sat on the floor of that storage room, with my son's notebook pressed against my chest. Long enough for my knees to go completely numb against the concrete. Long enough for the single bulb hanging from the ceiling to feel like the only light left in the world. When I finally got back to my feet, my legs shook under me, and I had to put one hand against the wall to steady myself. My face was wet. I did not wipe it. I picked up the box, placed the notebook and folder carefully back inside, and latched the lid. Then Frank opened the door a crack and said in a low and careful voice, "Tom, there's a car parked on the street, black sedan. It's been there since before you arrived, engines running, lights off." I looked at the notebook in my hands. Then I looked at the door. "How many exits does this building have?" I asked. "Side door on the north wall," Frank said. "Padlocked, but I have the key." "Get your keys," I said. "We're leaving right now." We went out through the north wall door. Frank had the padlock key on a ring with 6 others, and his hands were steady when he used it, steadier than mine would have been. We moved through the dark along the outside of the building to where I had parked the truck on the parallel street behind the lot. And we did it without running, because running draws attention, and the one thing we could not afford right now was attention. The black sedan did not follow us. I watched the rearview mirror for 4 blocks, then 6, then 8. Nothing. Either they had not seen us leave through the north door, or they had gotten what they came for simply by confirming that someone had come to this address tonight. Either possibility was disturbing in its own way. I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat on Cesar Chavez and killed the engine. The place was half full, a woman folding sheets at the long table, 2 teenagers on their phones near the dryers, an elderly man reading a paperback in the plastic chair nearest the window. Nobody who would remember us. Nobody who would care. I opened the laptop I kept behind the driver's seat and inserted the USB drive. There were 4 files on the drive. 3 were labeled with dates and project codes in Alex's filing system. The 4th was simply labeled, "Play this first." I clicked on it. The video was grainy shot on a phone camera, propped against something at an angle, the framing slightly off-center, but the audio was clear enough. The location appeared to be a construction site office trailer, the kind of prefabricated unit that gets dropped on every large job site. 2 men were visible. One was seated at the desk, with his back mostly to the camera. The other was standing near the door. The man standing near the door was someone I did not recognize at first. Heavy-set mid-40s in the video. So mid-50s now, with a thick neck and the permanently sunburned complexion of a man who had spent his career outdoors. He was speaking quietly, but with the particular emphasis of someone conveying instructions that were meant to be followed without question. The man at the desk turned slightly at one point, and I caught his profile. Victor Harrison. 15 years younger, but unmistakable. The same jaw. The same way of sitting spine, straight hands flat on the surface in front of him. The posture of a man who had decided long ago that the world would come to him rather than the other way around. I turned up the laptop volume. The audio quality dropped in places, but the substance was clear enough. The heavy-set man, the man near the door, was discussing the cable assembly on the main lift. Specific technical language, replacement schedule, a particular component that would need to be swapped before the morning crew arrived. Victor Harrison's voice on the recording was quiet and even. He asked 2 questions. He received 2 answers. Then he said in a tone that a person might use to confirm a lunch reservation that this needed to be handled that night and that the paperwork for the replacement would be managed separately. 15 years of wondering, and there it was in a grainy video on a USB drive in language designed to sound like nothing to anyone who did not know what they were listening to. Frank was watching the screen from the passenger seat. His jaw was working hard, the muscles in his cheeks contracting and releasing. His right hand had closed into a fist on his thigh, without him seeming to notice. "That's him," Frank said. His voice had gone very low and very rough. "The man by the door, that's the one I saw on the platform that night." "You're certain?" Frank turned to look at me directly. His eyes were wet at the corners, and he was clearly furious about it. "I have seen that man's face in my sleep for 15 years, he said. "I am certain." I closed the laptop and sat back against the headrest. My phone was already in my hand. I dialed Sarah Bennett. She answered on the second ring, which told me she had been awake. "I have a video," I said. "Audio and visual. 2 individuals. One of them I can identify. The other is a witness-corroborated identification." I heard her pull in a slow breath. "I also have a written engineering log documenting systematic material fraud on the Figueroa Street project, and a collection of financial transfer records." A pause. "Where are you right now?" "Mobile," I said. "I need to know something first. Someone has been watching me. Tonight there was a vehicle outside a location I visited. Black sedan, engine running, lights off. It was not there by accident." I paused. "I need to know if that's your people." Another pause, longer this time, and the quality of it told me something before she spoke. "It's not my people," Sarah said carefully. "But I know whose it might be. Thomas." She stopped. The use of my real name, not Walker, not Sir, but Thomas, landed between us with the weight of something that had been held back and could no longer be. "I had you run when you came into my office this morning. I recognized you about 40 minutes after you left. I've known who you are since approximately 9:45 this morning." The laundromat hummed around me. The woman with the sheets shook out a pillowcase. "Then who is watching me?" I asked. 3 members of your board of directors hired a private investigative firm 6 days ago," Sarah said. "When you took your leave of absence, they became concerned about liability exposure. They want to know what you're doing before it affects the company's stock position." Her voice was measured but not unsympathetic. "They're not working with Victor Harrison. They're protecting their own investment. But they are reporting your movements to the board." I pressed 2 fingers hard against my left temple. Even within the company I had built across 35 years, there were people whose first concern when the chairman disappeared was the share price. Frank was watching me. He had heard enough of the call to understand the shape of what was being said, and his expression had settled into something that was not quite disgust and not quite pity, but contained elements of both. The following morning, one of the board members called me directly. He had seen the preliminary evidence summary Gerald had quietly circulated. His voice was careful and slightly embarrassed, the voice of a man who had authorized something he now wished he had not. "We've called off the investigative firm," he said. "Whatever you need from the company's legal resources, they're available to you." I thanked him and hung up without elaborating. "I'll deal with the board," I said to Sarah. "That's already handled. Can you set up a secure location for me to bring the physical evidence?" "Yes," Sarah said. "But there's something else. I've been pulling background on Danny Cole, the man in your video. If your identification is correct. He left Harrison Global's payroll 8 months ago. His last known address is in the Valley, but he hasn't been seen there in 3 weeks. A beat. I have a contact at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. There was a credit card transaction at a hotel on the Strip 4 days ago under his name." "He's running," I said. "He's thinking about running," Sarah said. "There's a difference. Right now he's still in one place. That won't last." I looked at Frank. He was still watching me with those steady, tired eyes. My phone vibrated in my hand, a second call coming in, interrupting the connection with Sarah without ending it. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then something made me switch over. The voice that came through was quiet and slightly unsteady. The voice of someone who had rehearsed what they were going to say, and then abandoned the script at the last moment. "Thomas." A pause. "This is Emily. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't call if I didn't have to." Another pause longer filled with the sound of her breathing. "There's something I never told you. Something I should have told you 15 years ago. I need you to hear it from me before you hear it from someone else. The laundromat, the spinning dryers, the fluorescent lights. Tell me where you are," I said. The message sat there on the screen between us like a third person who had just pulled up a chair. "Victor Harrison just booked a flight. JFK to LAX. He lands in 4 hours." Emily looked at my phone. Then she looked at me. The color that had been slowly returning to her face over the past 20 minutes drained back out again, and her hands, which had just stopped trembling, started up again. Not the fine tremor from before, but something deeper and more thorough, originating somewhere in her chest and moving outward through her arms until her fingers were pressing hard against the tabletop, as though the table itself might drift away without her holding it down. "He knows you're looking," she said. Her voice had gone flat and careful, the voice of someone suppressing something large by sheer force of will. "He's known for a while, I think," I said. "He's coming because something changed, something he didn't expect." I thought about Frank Delgado and his thermos of coffee and his steady, unhurried hands. I thought about the metal box behind a crumbling wall. I thought about Alex spending 2 hours in that storage building in the dark, writing in a composition notebook by the light of his phone, hiding evidence that Victor Harrison had been certain no longer existed. Victor was coming because the ground had shifted under him and he could feel it. Emily was still looking at me. "Thomas, where is Lucas right now?" "Tell me," I said. She pulled in a breath that shook slightly on the way in. "He's at school, regular day. He doesn't know any of this." She looked down at her coffee cup, which had gone cold. "He thinks I came to Los Angeles for a work meeting, an architecture consultation. I didn't tell him the real reason because I didn't know how to start that conversation." Her jaw tightened. "He's 14. He knows his father died in a construction accident. That's all I've ever told him. I said it was an equipment failure, because that's what the report said and I didn't know what else to give him." The words hit me somewhere below the sternum. Equipment failure, the same 2 words. She had passed them to her son the way you pass along a wound you don't know how to treat. Not out of cruelty, but because it was the only bandage available and you were bleeding too. "He needs to go somewhere safe," I said. "Tonight. With you." "I know." She looked up at me, and in her eyes I saw something I had not seen there before. Not fear exactly, but the particular resolve of a woman who has been carrying something alone for a very long time, and has finally in this moment decided she is done carrying it that way. "I've been afraid for 9 years, Thomas. Since 2015, since that man stood outside Lucas's school and looked at me. I've been managing that fear, moving carefully, keeping quiet, staying small." Her hands pressed harder against the table. "I'm done being small." I looked at her across the small table in that quiet Pasadena coffee shop and understood something I should have understood years ago before I knew who she was, before I knew about Lucas, before I knew any of it. That this woman had loved my son and that my son had chosen well, and that the choice he made was still standing across from me 15 years later, with trembling hands and a spine made of something I recognized because Alex had been made of it too. "I owe you an apology," I said. Emily blinked. It was clearly not what she had been expecting. "Thomas, I know what you did in 2008, I said. "Gerald told me about your maiden name 3 hours ago. I know your father was Richard Wilson, and I know Victor Harrison used you to get access to our scheduling documents, and I know you were 23 years old, and you were trying to save your father." I held her gaze and kept my voice level. "And I know that Richard tried to tell me the truth before he died, and I didn't listen. So, the apology I owe you is not a small one." Emily's eyes filled again. She pressed her lips together hard. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My father died thinking you believed he was a thief." "I know," I said. "I'm going to fix that." "How?" "His name is going to be cleared, publicly, with full documentation of what was actually done to him and who did it." I paused. "That's already in motion, but I need a few more days to close it properly." She absorbed this without speaking for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and picked up her coffee cup, cold as it was, and held it in both hands and looked at nothing in particular, past my shoulder, while she put herself back together. It took maybe 30 seconds. When she looked at me again, her eyes were still bright, but her hands were steadier. "He would have liked you," she said. "Lucas, he asks questions exactly the way Alex used to, and he has this way of going completely still. When someone is talking, like he's recording every word, and then 10 minutes later, he'll come back with a follow-up question that makes you realize he understood more than you thought." She almost smiled. "Alex did that. I used to tease him about it. I'd say he was storing everything up for some report he was planning to submit later." My throat tightened so hard, I had to look away for a moment. Out through the coffee shop window, an elderly man was walking a very small dog along the sidewalk in the October morning, moving slowly in no apparent hurry to be anywhere other than exactly where he was. I watched him for a few seconds and let the pressure in my chest even out. "I want to meet him," I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended. "When this is over, when it's safe and the people who need to be in front of a judge are in front of a judge. I want to meet my grandson." Emily set her cup down. "He has questions about his father. He's always had questions. I've answered what I could, but there are things I don't know, things about Alex's work, about who he was on a job site, about what he believed in and why he did what he did." She looked at me directly. "Those are your answers, Thomas, not mine." I reached into my jacket pocket and touched the edge of Richard's letter through the fabric. 2 pieces of paper I was carrying. Now Richard's letter folded against my ribs and the last entry in Alex's composition notebook sealed inside the evidence envelope. 2 men who had tried to reach me across 15 years of silence. "Tell Lucas," I said, "that his father was the best engineer I ever saw. Tell him that's not sentiment, it's a professional assessment from a man who has evaluated hundreds of engineers over 35 years. Tell him his father found something that took real courage to find and documented it with a rigor that 15 years of professional burial couldn't erase." I paused. "Tell him his father was not afraid." Emily's chin lifted slightly. She was crying again, not the helpless overflow from earlier, but something quieter and more deliberate, tears moving down her face while her expression held steady. "How do you know that because of what he wrote in his notebook?" I said. "The last entry, the night before." She held my gaze for a long moment, then she nodded once slowly, the nod of someone receiving something they have needed for a very long time and have stopped believing would ever arrive. My phone buzzed again on the table. Gerald this time with Victor's flight details, departure time, airline arrival terminal, 4 hours and 12 minutes until wheels down it's at LAX. I stood up from the table. "Pack tonight," I said. "Both of you. I'll arrange somewhere for you and Lucas to stay in Los Angeles somewhere Victor Harrison doesn't know about and can't find. Call me when you're in the car." Emily stood too. She was small. I had not registered that before, perhaps because she had been carrying so much that she had seemed larger than she was. She extended her hand, which was the formal thing to do. And also I understood the exact right thing to do in acknowledgement that we were at the beginning of something rather than the end of something, and that the beginning deserved its own gesture. I shook it. Her grip was firm. Alex had chosen well. Outside, the October morning was cool and bright, and somewhere over the Atlantic, a man named Victor Harrison was sitting in a first-class seat with his briefcase on his lap, coming to Los Angeles to close a loose end he didn't know was no longer loose. He was going to land in 4 hours. I needed to be ready. Sarah called me while I was still driving back from Pasadena. Victor Harrison just cleared customs at LAX, she said without preamble. He checked into the Langham in Pasadena 40 minutes ago. No luggage beyond a carry-on. Credit card in his own name he's not hiding. A pause. That's what worries me. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. He's not here for me. No, Sarah said. I don't think he is. I think he's here for Frank Delgado. I had reached the same conclusion 20 minutes earlier, sitting in the parking lot outside the coffee shop, while Emily went back inside to pay the check. Victor had not known about the metal box. He had not known about the USB drive or the notebook or any of it, because Danny Cole had carried out his instructions on the night of November 14th, without knowing that Alex had already moved the evidence to the storage building hours before. Victor had spent 15 years believing he had eliminated every loose end. Except one. Frank Delgado had seen Danny Cole's face on that platform. Frank had filed an incident report. Frank had been removed from the site within 72 hours, which meant someone had flagged his name, and someone had acted on it, which meant Victor had known about Frank for 15 years and had simply never been able to locate him. Until now. Until Tom Walker started asking questions on the same construction site, where Frank Delgado worked the early morning shift. I led him to Frank, I said. You didn't know, Sarah said. That doesn't change what it means. I pulled off the freeway at the next exit and sat in a gas station forecourt with the engine running. I need to move Frank tonight, somewhere Victor's people can't find him. I can arrange a safe location through the department, Sarah said. Unofficial off the books for now. If we move too fast and Victor's lawyers find out we're building a case, they'll file for injunctions and we lose the element of surprise. She paused. Bring me the original evidence from the box tonight. I want it in a secure facility before Victor has time to start looking. I hung up and called Frank. He answered on the first ring. I've been sitting here with the doors locked, he said. I'm not embarrassed to tell you that. Don't be, I said. Pack what you need for a week. I'm coming to get you. Frank went quiet for a moment. Then, in a voice that was gruff and slightly unsteady, Tom, whatever this is, whatever you're really doing here, I want you to know I'm in. All the way. I've been waiting 15 years for someone to take this seriously. My throat tightened. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I was pulling back onto the freeway when Gerald sent me Victor's hotel confirmation details, the Langham Huntington in Pasadena, a suite on the 4th floor booked for 3 nights. 3 nights meant Victor expected to accomplish something specific within that window. By the time I reached Frank's street, he was standing outside the side door of the building with a duffel bag over one shoulder, and his steel thermos in his hand, squinting at my headlights. He climbed in without a word and sat with the duffel on his lap, his big calloused hands folded over it. Where are we going? He asked. Somewhere safe, I said. We drove in silence for 3 blocks before Frank said, That car is back. I checked the mirror, a dark sedan, 2 vehicles behind us, maintaining distance. I turned left without signaling. The sedan turned left. I turned right at the next intersection. The sedan turned right. Hold on, I said. I took the next 4 turns in quick succession, right, left, cutting through a residential neighborhood until I found an alley behind a row of commercial buildings. I killed the headlights and pulled in and waited. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. Nothing came down the alley behind us. Frank let out a long breath that seemed to deflate him several inches. You've done that before? He said. Not exactly, I said. But I've spent 35 years outmaneuvering people in boardrooms. Turns out the principles are similar. Frank made a sound that was almost a laugh. Almost. I pulled back out onto the street and drove east toward the address Sarah had given me, a departmental safe house in El Sereno, a small house on a quiet block that the LAPD used for witness protection situations that had not yet reached the level of formal program enrollment. Sarah was waiting on the front steps when we arrived. She looked at Frank for a long moment, then extended her hand. Mr. Delgado, she said. My name is Detective Sarah Bennett. I've been waiting a long time to talk to you. Frank shook her hand. His grip was firm, the same unhurried handshake he had given me on our first night. Likewise, he said quietly. Sarah looked at me over Frank's shoulder. Her expression asked a question she did not need to say aloud. I reached into my jacket and handed her the metal box. She took it with both hands carefully, the way you carry something that has been a long time finding its way to the right place. I'll need the originals logged into evidence tonight, she said. Chain of custody starts now. I know, I said. I was walking back to the truck when my phone rang. Unknown number. I had started answering unknown numbers as a matter of policy. The voice on the other end was smooth and even, and completely utterly unhurried. "Thomas," said Victor Harrison. "It's been a very long time. I heard you've been working nights lately. How are you finding the security business?" Every muscle in my back went rigid simultaneously as though someone had run a current through my spine. He knew. He had known for longer than tonight, and he had let me continue anyway, and the only question that mattered now was why. "Victor?" I said. My voice came out level. I was proud of that. "What do you want?" "I want to have a conversation," he said pleasantly. "Just the two of us, the way old acquaintances do." A brief pause. "There are people around you, Thomas, who could be affected by what you're doing. I'd hate for anyone to be caught in the middle of something that's really between you and me." My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles ached. "I'll call you back," I said, and ended the call. Sarah was watching me from the front steps of the safe house, the metal box under her arm. "That was Victor Harrison," I said. Her expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened. "What did he say?" "He reminded me," I said, "that there are people around me who could get hurt." I drove back to the motel alone. The room was exactly as I had left it, the Casio watch on the nightstand, the manila folder with Richard's letter on the desk, the photograph of Alex propped against the lamp base where I had placed it on the first night. I sat on the edge of the bed and held the phone in both hands and looked at Victor Harrison's number in my recent calls list. Then I called him back. He answered before the second ring. Of course he did. He had been waiting. "Thomas," he said, with the warmth of a man greeting an old colleague at a conference. "I'm glad you called back. I wasn't sure you would." "Say what you want to say, Victor," I said. "It's late." "Of course." A brief pause. Not the pause of a man gathering his thoughts, but the pause of a man who had already decided exactly what he was going to say and was simply choosing his moment. "I want you to think carefully about the position you're putting yourself in. You've been asking questions about events that are 15 years old. Closed cases. Settled matters." His voice was smooth and unhurried like water moving over flat stone. "The people who investigated that accident were thorough professionals. The findings were clear." "The findings were purchased," I said, not even a hesitation. "That's a serious allegation, Thomas, the kind that requires evidence to support it." "I have evidence," I said. The silence that followed was 3 seconds long. I counted them. In those 3 seconds, something shifted almost imperceptibly in the quality of Victor's breathing, a slight shallowing there, and gone so fast I might have imagined it. "Then I suppose we'll see what it amounts to," he said, and his voice had not changed at all. Still smooth, still, completely unhurried. That was the most frightening thing about Victor Harrison. He did not frighten easily. "I only want to suggest as an old acquaintance that there are consequences to this kind of pursuit that extend beyond the person doing the pursuing. People nearby. People who are connected to you." Another pause. "Emily has built a quiet life for herself in San Francisco. It would be a shame to disrupt that." My back teeth came together so hard I felt it in my jaw joints. "Are you threatening her?" I said. "I'm observing," he said pleasantly, "that disruption has a way of spreading, like a crack in a foundation. You know how that works better than most people, Thomas. It starts small and it travels." A beat. "I hope we can resolve this between ourselves as reasonable men, without anyone else being drawn in." "Good night, Victor," I said, and ended the call. I sat still for 30 seconds. Then I called Emily. She answered on the third ring, her voice fogged with sleep. It was past 11. I had not thought about the time. "Thomas," instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "I need you and Lucas to come to Los Angeles," I said. "Tomorrow morning. I'll book the flights right now, first departure out of SFO, whatever that is. Southwest United, I don't care. I'll send you the confirmation." "Thomas, what happened?" "Victor Harrison landed in Los Angeles this afternoon," I said. "He called me tonight. He mentioned your name and San Francisco in the same sentence. I am not going to wait and see what that means." The silence on her end lasted 4 seconds. Then, "Okay." Her voice had gone very quiet and very clear. The fog of sleep entirely gone, replaced by something harder and more deliberate. "Okay, I'll wake Lucas. We'll be ready." "Pack for a week," I said. "Don't tell anyone where you're going. Call me when you're at the gate." I booked 2 seats on the 6:15 United flight from SFO to LAX, first available, direct arriving 7:55 in the morning, and sent Emily the confirmation before I set the phone down. Then I sat in the motel room with the photograph of Alex in my hands and tried to organize what I knew into something that resembled a plan. Victor was in Los Angeles. He knew I was investigating. He had chosen to call rather than act, which meant he still believed he could manage this through pressure rather than force, which meant he did not yet know about the metal box, the USB drive, or the evidence now secured in LAPD custody. The call had been a warning, not a reaction. He was still operating from a position of assumed control. That assumption was wrong, but it would not stay wrong for long. I picked up the phone again and called Sarah. Victor made an indirect reference to Emily in San Francisco, I said when she answered. I'm moving Emily and her son to Los Angeles first thing tomorrow. Smart, Sarah said. What was his tone? Conversational, I said. That's what concerns me most. Agreed, she said. A man who raises his voice is managing his fear. A man who stays pleasant is managing yours. She paused. Thomas, I want to flag something. What Victor said, mentioning Emily by name and location in the context of your investigation, that potentially constitutes witness intimidation under federal statute. Title 18, United States Code, Section 1512. If we can document that, it becomes part of the case. I'll write it down tonight, I said. Everything I remember, verbatim. Good, Sarah said. Get some sleep. Tomorrow gets complicated. I set the phone down on the nightstand beside the Casio watch. On the desk, Richard's letter sat in its folder, patient and permanent. On the lamp base, Alex looked out from the photograph with his hard hat and his easy grin and his absolute certainty that doing the right thing was always worth the trouble. I reached out and turned the photograph face down. Not because I could not bear to look at it, but because I needed to stop looking backward tonight and start thinking about what came next. I was almost asleep when Sarah's message came through. Danny Cole checked out of his Las Vegas hotel this morning. Paid cash, no forwarding information. If he runs for a border, we lose him. We need to move on this tomorrow. I stared at the ceiling of the motel room for a long time after that. Tomorrow, I thought. Everything tomorrow. Outside, the October night settled over East Los Angeles, and somewhere across the city in a suite at the Langham Huntington Victor, Harrison was almost certainly sleeping soundly, the particular deep sleep of a man who had never yet had reason to doubt his own invincibility. I was going to give him a reason. Emily had texted me when they landed. I was already in the parking structure of the hotel when the message came through a Marriott on Figueroa in downtown Los Angeles, booked under Gerald's corporate account, the kind of mid-range business hotel where nobody asks questions and the lobby cameras cover every entrance. Sarah had approved the location. 3 floors up from street-level interior, corridor keycard access on both stairwells. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and knocked on room 417. Emily opened the door. Behind her, sitting on the edge of the bed, nearest the window with a backpack on his lap and his shoes still on, was a 14-year-old boy who looked up when the door opened and looked directly at me with a gaze so steady and so immediate that the breath went out of me like something had struck me in the center of the chest. He had Alex's eyes. Not similar to Alex's eyes, not reminiscent of them. He had them the exact same dark brown, the exact same quality of attention, the particular way Alex had of looking at something new, as though he was already in the process of understanding it, rather than simply seeing it for the first time. My hand found the doorframe without my telling it to. My fingers gripped the wood and held on. Lucas? Emily said quietly, "This is your grandfather? Thomas Carter." The boy stood up from the bed. He was tall for 14, nearly my height already, with the unfinished look of someone whose body had grown faster than the rest of him had caught up with. He held out his hand the way someone had taught him to, and the gesture was so adult and so uncertain at the same time that it cracked something open in my chest that I had not known was still intact. I shook his hand. His grip was firm. Alex's grip had been firm at 14. I remembered the first time Alex shook my hand instead of taking it standing on a job site in Burbank, trying to seem older than he was, and grinning when he caught me noticing. "Are you really my grandfather?" Lucas asked. His voice was direct and unhesitating, the question of someone who had decided that if he was going to ask it at all, he was going to ask it plainly. "Yes," I said. My own voice came out rough at the edges, scraped by something I was working hard to keep in its place. "I am. Lucas nodded slowly, processing this with an expression that reminded me so precisely of Alex working through the problem at the kitchen table that I had to look away for a moment toward the window and the gray Los Angeles morning beyond it. Emily touched my arm. "Come in," she said softly. "Sit down." We sat Emily in the chair near the desk, Lucas back on the edge of the bed, me on the chair I pulled from the corner. For a few minutes we talked about the flight about San Francisco, about the hotel breakfast Lucas had already identified as adequate but not exceptional. The boy was composed in a way that surprised me and then did not surprise me because Alex had been composed too. It had been one of the things that made him exceptional as an engineer, that quality of stillness under pressure. Then Lucas said, "My mom told me my dad was a good man." I looked at him directly. "He was the best man I ever knew." "Then why did he have to die?" His voice was level when he asked it, but his jaw was set tight and his hands had closed around the straps of his backpack, his knuckles pale against the fabric. He was not being accusatory. He was asking the question he had been carrying for as long as he had been old enough to understand that there was a question to carry. The pain that moved through me at that moment was specific and clean, and almost unbearable in its precision. The grief of a father for a son refracted through the eyes of a son who had never had the chance to know his father. "That's what I'm trying to find out," I said, "and I promise you I will." Lucas held my gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded once, and something in the set of his jaw relaxed slightly. He was not fully satisfied, but he was willing to wait. My phone rang. It was Sarah. I held up one finger to Emily and stepped into the small hallway between the room and the bathroom. "I pulled the Cedars-Sinai records this morning," Sarah said without preamble. "Emergency admission, November 15th, 2009, 2:14 a.m. Patient Alexander Thomas Carter. Time of death, 4:17 a.m. A pause that felt deliberate, like she was choosing her next words carefully. "Thomas. He was alive for 2 hours and 3 minutes after the accident. And the admitting nurse's incident notes list a visitor present from approximately 2:30 a.m. until time of death." I pressed my free hand flat against the hallway wall. "Who?" I asked. "The visitor isn't named in the primary file," Sarah said, "but the nurse who logged the entry is. Carol Marsh. She retired 4 years ago. I have a current address in San Diego." Another pause. "Thomas, if Alex was conscious during any part of those 2 hours, if he said anything, Carol Marsh is the only person alive who would know what it was." The wall was cool and solid under my palm. My son had been alive for 2 hours and 3 minutes. He had not died on the construction site in the rain alone the way the report had described it. He had been taken to a hospital, and he had lasted through most of the night, and there had been a woman sitting beside him whose name I had never heard until this moment. "I'll go to San Diego tomorrow," I said. "I figured," Sarah said. "One more thing. I made some calls about the lawsuit Victor filed. His legal team in New York has been building the case file since 2021. This is not a reaction to what you're doing now. He had this prepared and waiting. If he gets a judge to issue a discovery order on Carter Development's technical files from 2009, we have 72 hours before your legal team has to respond." "How do we stop it?" "We don't stop it," Sarah said. "We outrun it. We need Danny Cole's testimony locked in before Victor's lawyers can file for an injunction." Her voice was flat and practical, the voice of someone who had been doing this long enough to know that urgency and panic were not the same thing. "Las Vegas. Tomorrow." I came back into the room. Lucas was showing Emily something on his phone, leaning toward her, with the unconscious ease of a boy who trusted his mother completely, and the domesticity of the gesture, so ordinary, so unremarkable, hit me somewhere I was not prepared for it. Alex should have been in that picture. Alex should have been the one leaning over to show Emily something on his phone, in some ordinary moment, in some ordinary room, with their son between them. The fury that moved through me then was cold and precise and very, very quiet. "Is everything okay?" Emily asked, looking up. "Yes," I said. I sat back down across from them. "I need to be somewhere early tomorrow, but tonight I'm here." I looked at Lucas. "And I'd like to hear about San Francisco if you want to tell me." For the first time since I had walked through that door, the boy smiled. It was Alex's smile. Of course it was. I left Los Angeles before 5 in the morning. The freeway south was nearly empty at that hour, just long-haul trucks and the occasional early commuter headlights moving through the pre-dawn dark like slow-moving stars. I drove with both hands on the wheel and the radio off and the heater running low, and I let the miles count down on the dashboard display, without thinking too carefully about what I was driving toward. Carol Marsh lived in a neighborhood called Normal Heights in San Diego, a quiet residential street of older craftsman bungalows, with deep front porches and established trees that had been growing long enough to push the sidewalk slabs out of alignment. I found the house without difficulty. A light was already on in the front room when I pulled up, which meant Sarah had called ahead, as she had said she would. Carol Marsh opened the door before I reached the porch steps. She was in her early 60s, a small woman with silver hair cut short and practical, wearing a cardigan the color of old brick over a collared shirt. She had the unhurried steadiness of someone who had spent decades in rooms where steadiness was the most important thing she could offer. And when she looked at me, really looked the way people do, when they are searching a face for something specific, her eyes filled so quickly and so completely that she had to press one hand against her sternum and take a careful breath. "You look like him," she said quietly. "Something in the way you carry yourself. I knew the moment I saw you coming up the walk." My throat closed around whatever I had intended to say. "Mrs. Marsh," I managed, "thank you for seeing me." "Carol," she said, and stepped back from the door. "Please come in. I've made coffee." The front room was small and warm, filled with the particular comfort of a space that had been lived in thoughtfully over many years. Bookshelves covering 2 full walls, a reading chair positioned near the window, with a lamp angled precisely over it, a small table with 2 cups already set out. On the side table beside the reading chair was a composition notebook with a blue cover worn at the corners, a strip of ribbon marking a page somewhere near the back. I sat in the chair she indicated and wrapped both hands around the coffee cup and tried to hold myself together. Carol sat across from me and placed the composition notebook on her knee. She did not open it immediately. "I want to tell you what happened first," she said. "Before you read it, I want you to hear it the way I experienced it, not just the words on the page." "All right," I said. She had been on the overnight shift at Cedars-Sinai on the night of November 14th, 2009. The paramedics brought Alex in at 2:14 in the morning. He had significant injuries from the fall. She used clinical language here, measured and careful, and I was grateful for the distance it provided. But he was conscious when he arrived and remained intermittently conscious. For most of the time, he was in her care. "He was frightened at first," Carol said. "Not about himself, I want you to understand that. He wasn't frightened for himself. He kept asking about his father, whether anyone had called his father." Her voice caught for just a moment and then steadied again. "I told him we were trying to reach family. I didn't know at the time that our attempts were being intercepted." "Martin Shaw," I said. She nodded. "The detective explained that to me this morning. I want you to know I called the main number for Carter Development twice that week. The first time I was told the family had been notified and did not wish to be contacted. The second time, I called your personal residence directly. No one answered. I left a message." She looked down at her hands. "I told myself you needed time. That grief looks different for different people. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. I'm sorry I didn't try harder." "You tried," I said. "That's more than most people would have done." Carol opened the composition notebook to the marked page. Her handwriting was small and precise, the handwriting of someone accustomed to making detailed notes in limited space. The entry was dated November 15th, 2009, and it covered 3 full pages. She read it aloud. She read me what Alex had said about the project, about the materials that had been substituted, about the payments he had traced to entities that did not exist in any legitimate corporate registry, about the person inside Carter Development who had made it possible someone with access to correspondence, to scheduling, to the internal systems that controlled who knew what and when. She read me what he had said about Emily. "Tell her I never blamed her," Alex had said, according to Carol's careful notation. "Tell her I know she was trying to help her father. Tell her to be brave and raise our child to be brave." The coffee cup in my hands had gone completely still. Our child. Alex had known. In those final hours in that hospital room, he had known that Emily was pregnant. He had been thinking about a child he would never meet, asking a stranger to carry words to a woman he would never see again. Carol's voice continued steady and low, reading from her notebook. And then she reached the last passage, and her voice slowed the way voices do when they are approaching something that has weight. "Near the end," Carol said, setting the notebook down for a moment and looking at me directly, "he became very clear, clearer than he had been for the previous hour. People do that. Sometimes there's a period of clarity. He looked at me and he said, very deliberately. She picked the notebook back up and read the exact words she had written down in the early morning hours of November the 15th, 2009. Tell my dad I found the proof. It's in the wall, east side. He'll know which one. And tell him I finished what I started and that I wasn't afraid. I was not aware of putting the coffee cup down. I was not aware of standing up. I became aware of myself standing at Carol's front window, with one arm braced against the wall above my head, and my forehead pressed against the cold glass, and my chest heaving with the effort of processing something that was too large and too specific and too final for any of the mechanisms I had developed over 15 years of learning to carry this. He had not been afraid. My son, in the last hours of his life, in a hospital room in the dark, had sent me a message and told me he was not afraid. Carol did not try to fill the silence. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and let me have whatever time I needed, and I understood in that moment why Alex had trusted her with those words. She was the kind of person who understood that sometimes the most important thing you can offer is the willingness to simply remain present. When I turned back around, my face was wet and I did not attempt to conceal it. "Can I keep that page?" I asked. My voice had been taken apart and reassembled incorrectly, each word coming out slightly wrong in a way I could not correct. Carol had already marked the page with a paperclip. "I made a copy for the detective," she said, tearing it carefully from the notebook along the margin. "This one is yours. I've been holding it for 15 years, Mr. Carter. It belongs to you." I folded it once and placed it carefully in my jacket pocket beside Richard's letter. 3 pieces of paper now. 3 people who had tried to reach me. 2 pieces of paper from 2 men who had tried to reach me and had not been able to. I was almost at the door when my phone rang, Sarah's name on the screen. "The lawsuit is moving faster than we thought," she said without greeting. "Victor's legal team filed an emergency motion in New York federal court this morning, requesting expedited discovery. We have 48 hours, not 72. Her voice was clipped and precise. "We need Danny Cole today, Thomas. Not tomorrow. Today." I looked back at Carol Marsh, who was standing in the doorway of her front room with her hands clasped together and her eyes still bright with the tears she had been too disciplined to shed in front of me. "Thank you," I said to her, "for all of it, for every year you held on to that." She nodded, once her chin lifting slightly. "Go finish what he started," she said. That's all he ever wanted. I walked back to the truck and pulled up the directions to Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas. 430 miles. I could be there by early afternoon. I called Sarah from the airport. "Victor's legal team filed the emergency motion at 8 this morning," she said. "New York federal court. They're claiming Carter Development misappropriated Harrison Global's proprietary construction methods, which is exactly backwards, but that's the strategy. Force your legal team to produce the 2009 technical files under discovery, then use their own lawyers to bury the real evidence in procedural delays. Can we block it? Your attorneys can contest it under the California Uniform Trade Secrets Act CUTSE, since the original technology was developed in California and the misappropriation happened here. That argument buys us time, but not much." Her voice was flat and practical. "The real answer is Danny Cole. A sworn federal deposition from a direct participant in the conspiracy makes Victor's lawsuit collapse on its own weight. No judge will grant discovery motions in a civil case when the opposing party is simultaneously a subject of criminal investigation." "Frank," I said. "Where is he?" "Safe house. He's been there since last night." A pause. "Thomas, he wants to talk to you." She put Frank on. His voice came through the line, rough and deliberate, the voice of a man who had made a decision and was stating it plainly so there would be no misunderstanding. "Tom," he said, "I want to make it official. Whatever they need from me, statement, depositions, testimony in open court, I'll do it. All of it." A short pause. "I've been running from that night for 15 years. I reported what I saw, and they took my job, and I let them scare me into silence, and I have been angry at myself for that every single day since." His voice tightened, went rough at the center. Alex Carter deserved better than what I gave him. "I'm not running anymore." My throat constricted around a response that took a moment to organize itself. "Frank," I said, "what you're doing takes more courage than most people will ever understand." "It's not courage," Frank said with a short, hard sound that was almost a laugh. "It's just 15 years too late." I boarded the 1:45 Southwest flight to Las Vegas. From 30,000 feet, I pulled up the email from Carter Development's lead attorney, a detailed summary of the legal exposure. Victor's motion was aggressive and well-constructed, the work of a firm that had been preparing for this specific scenario for years. The filing argued that the structural innovations appearing in Harrison Global's 2024 New York project had been independently developed by Harrison Global, beginning in 2010, 1 year after Alex's death, 1 year after Victor had taken everything Alex had built and repackaged it under a different name. The audacity of it was almost architectural in its construction. But it had a foundational flaw. Alex's engineering log, now in LAPD evidence custody, was dated throughout 2008 and 2009, predating every Harrison Global claim by a minimum of 2 years. The USB video documented Victor discussing the project's specifics in 2009. Combined with Danny Cole's testimony connecting Victor directly to the events of November 14th, the civil lawsuit did not just weaken. It became evidence of consciousness of guilt. I landed at Harry Reid International at 2:50 in the afternoon. Sarah had texted the hotel name and room number. I took a cab directly from the terminal, no rental car, nothing traceable, and checked into an adjacent property under Gerald's account. I sat in the cab and looked out at the Las Vegas Strip, sliding past in the afternoon glare, all that manufactured brightness under a desert sky, and thought about a man named Danny Cole, who had spent 8 months quietly distancing himself from Victor Harrison and was now sitting in a hotel room, trying to decide whether running was still an option. It was not, but he did not know that yet. I texted Sarah in position, ready when you are. Her reply came back in under a minute. FBI contact confirmed. Agent Rivera will be in the lobby of Danny's hotel at 3:30. You have 15 minutes with Cole before we come in. Don't let him leave the room. I looked at the time on my phone. I had 12 minutes. Before I reveal who truly destroyed my family, before the name that will change everything finally comes to light, I need to know you're still here with me on Revenge Dad. Type truth in the comments. Just that one word. Because what I'm about to tell you is the moment I had been waiting 15 years to reach. Please note, the story you're hearing contains some fictional elements included to bring this experience to life. What follows may not reflect every detail of reality. If that's not something you'd like to continue with, you're free to stop here, and I'll understand completely. The hotel was called the Desert Rose, a mid-range property 3 blocks off the Strip, the kind of place that catered to people who wanted to be in Las Vegas without paying Las Vegas prices. Room 214 was on the second floor interior corridor, no balcony. I knocked twice. A long pause, then the sound of the security chain being checked. Then the door opened 4 inches and a face appeared in the gap. Heavyset mid-50s, the permanently sunburned complexion I had seen on the USB video, 15 years younger and far less certain of itself. Danny Cole looked at me, and Danny Cole recognized me. The color left his face so completely and so instantly that it was almost clinical to watch, like a switch being thrown. His mouth opened and produced no sound. His hand on the door edge began to shake visibly, the tremor traveling up through his forearm in a way he clearly could not control. "You're," he started. "Thomas Carter," I said. "Yes, may I come in?" He stepped back, not because he wanted to, because his legs made the decision for him. The room smelled of takeout containers and stale air conditioning. A duffel bag sat half-packed on the bed. A one-way bus ticket to Phoenix was visible on the nightstand. Not a flight, a bus. The choice of a man trying to move without leaving a digital trace. I sat in the chair near the window. I did not raise my voice. I did not move toward him. I placed a single sheet of paper on the small table between us. "That's a copy of the federal arrest warrant," I said. "It's waiting for a signature. What happens in the next 15 minutes determines whether you spend the next 20 years in a federal penitentiary or whether you spend considerably less time in a minimum security facility and walk out while you're still young enough for it to matter." Danny Cole sat down on the edge of the bed because his legs had stopped being reliable. He pressed both hands between his knees and stared at the warrant with the expression of a man watching something inevitable arrive. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I want you to know that. Victor said it was just going to be a delay, a setback. He said nobody was going to—" "I know what Victor said," I said quietly. "I need to hear what you did." And Danny Cole told me. He told me about the cable assembly on the main lift, the specific component Victor had instructed him to replace with a substandard part that would hold under normal load but fail under stress. He told me about the camera system 3 units whose recording schedules he had manipulated so that the relevant window appeared on the logs but produced no usable footage. He told me about the morning after, when Victor had called him at 6 a.m. and told him the situation had been resolved and his payment would arrive within the week. He told me about Martin Shaw. Shaw was the inside man, Danny said. He was crying now, not dramatically, not with any apparent awareness that he was doing it, just tears moving steadily down his face while his voice continued flat and exhausted. Victor couldn't have done any of it without someone on the inside controlling the information flow. Shaw handled correspondence scheduling, personnel access. He made sure Alex's reports went to the right people late enough to matter, and the wrong people's paperwork went through clean. Martin Shaw, I said. Executive Vice President of Operations. Yes. Danny wiped his face with the back of his hand. He called me once after. Just once. He said he hadn't known it would go that far. He sounded like a man who had figured out too late what he'd agreed to. I looked at Danny Cole for a long moment. 32 years old. Alex had been 32 years old. Tell the FBI everything you just told me, I said. Every detail, every name, every date. I stood up from the chair. If you hold anything back, the warrant gets signed and the deal disappears. Danny nodded. His hands were still shaking between his knees. I knocked 3 times on the wall beside the window. 30 seconds later, a knock on the room door. I opened it. Agent Rivera, a compact man in his 40s with a navy jacket and a calm professional manner, stepped inside with a second agent behind him and a recording device already running. Mr. Cole, Agent Rivera said. I'm Special Agent Rivera with the FBI. You have the right to have an attorney present. Do you want to proceed? Danny looked at the warrant on the table. Then he looked at me. Yes, he said. I want to proceed. I walked out into the corridor and leaned my back against the wall and looked at the ceiling and breathed. On the drive back to the airport, Sarah called. Victor just announced a press conference, she said. Tomorrow morning, New York, he's going public with the narrative before we can. What's the narrative? That Thomas Carter is a grieving father who has spent 15 years constructing a fantasy to avoid accepting that his son died in a preventable accident caused by Carter Development's own safety failures. A pause. It's designed to make everything you found look like confirmation bias, and it's designed to draw you out. I stared at the desert highway unreeling ahead of me. It's a trap, I said. Yes, Sarah said. But Thomas, if you don't respond, he controls the story. I called Martin Shaw from 30,000 feet. He answered on the 4th ring. His voice was the voice of a man in his late 60s who had not been sleeping well for a very long time, rough at the edges, careful in the middle. The voice of someone who had been rehearsing this conversation in his head for years, and still was not ready for it. Thomas, he said, just my name, nothing else. I know everything, Martin, I said. Danny Cole gave his statement to the FBI 3 hours ago. I have the metal box Alex left behind. I have the video. I have Richard's letter. I paused. I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling because I need to hear it from you directly. A silence that lasted long enough that I checked the phone to make sure the call had not dropped. Then Martin Shaw began to talk. His son had been 26 in 2009. A bad investment, a worse cover-up, and suddenly the kind of debt that does not stay quiet. Victor had approached Martin at an industry dinner in March of that year, casual friendly the way Victor always operated, and the conversation had moved so smoothly from pleasantries to proposal that Martin had not identified the moment it became something he could not take back. He told me it was a business arrangement, Martin said. His voice broke on the word arrangement, and he did not try to fix it. He said he needed someone to manage the flow of certain internal communications, delay some things, redirect others. He said nobody would be harmed. He said it was about competitive intelligence, nothing more. And when Alex died, I asked. The sound Martin made was not a word. It was something that had been compressed under 15 years of pressure and had finally found a point of release. I called Victor, Martin said. I told him I was going to the police. He told me... Another pause. His breathing was audible now, effortful. He told me that my son's name was in documents that could be made available to federal investigators within 24 hours, that my son would go to prison, that everything I had done to protect him would be undone by a single phone call. His voice had dropped to almost nothing. I chose my son Thomas. I know what that makes me. I have known every day for 15 years. I looked out the airplane window at the darkness above the California desert. Your testimony will be required, I said. A full statement to the FBI, everything. I know, Martin said. I've been ready for this call for a long time. I landed at LAX at 9:40 in the evening. In the car on the way back to the motel, Sarah called. Victor's press conference starts at 10 a.m. New York time, she said. 7 a.m. our time. He's framing it as a statement on corporate integrity. He has 3 character witnesses lined up and a prepared statement that runs to 12 pages. A pause. His lawyers have also prepared a civil detention order. If you appear publicly in response to his press conference, they file it immediately. You'd be required to appear in New York federal court within 48 hours. Which pulls me out of Los Angeles, I said. Away from the evidence, away from me, away from everything. Her voice was tight. Thomas, if you walk into that, he wins the next 2 weeks regardless of what happens after. I sat with that for a long moment. Then I said, set up a press conference, Los Angeles, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Thomas, I heard you, Sarah. Set it up anyway. She was quiet for 3 full seconds. I'll need to call in some favors. The DA's office, the FBI field office here, they need to be present for this to carry weight. Then call them, I said, and tell them to bring their evidence logs. Everything that's been processed from the metal box goes on record tomorrow morning. I arrived at the motel and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time in the dark. On the nightstand, Alex's photograph faced the ceiling, where I had left it face down 3 nights ago. I reached out and turned it back over. His hard hat, his easy grin, his absolute certainty that doing the right thing was worth the trouble. Tomorrow, I told him. My phone buzzed. Sarah. Press conference confirmed. 8 a.m. Los Angeles DA's office is in. FBI field office is in. 40 journalists already confirmed. And then a second message 30 seconds later. Victor's lawyers just filed the civil detention order. Preemptively. They filed it tonight before you've even appeared. They're not waiting for tomorrow. I read that twice. Victor had filed the order before I had done anything. He was not reacting to me. He was trying to prevent me from ever reaching that podium. I set the phone down on the nightstand beside Alex's photograph. He's scared, I said aloud to the empty room, to the photograph, to whoever was listening. It was the first time in 15 years I had believed that was true. The press conference was held in a conference room on the 4th floor of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office on Temple Street. 41 journalists, 2 cameras from local affiliates, 1 representative from the FBI Los Angeles field office standing to my left, Sarah Bennett standing to my right with a case file under her arm that contained duplicates of every piece of evidence now logged in LAPD custody. I had been standing at that podium for 11 minutes when my phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. I ignored it. I was explaining the chain of custody of the metal box, how Alex had placed it in the wall of the East Los Angeles storage building on the night of November the 13th, 2009, hours before the accident, and how it had remained undisturbed for 15 years until a section of old plaster gave way when my phone vibrated again and again. I paused mid-sentence, which I had not done once in 11 minutes, and something in that pause must have been visible because Sarah took a half-step toward me. I reached into my pocket. 4 missed calls from Emily. 1 text message. Lucas is gone. He's not in his room. I can't find him anywhere. I looked up at 41 journalists and 2 cameras and said, "Excuse me," and walked off the podium. Sarah was beside me in the corridor before the door had fully closed behind us. "Lucas," I said. "He's missing from the hotel." Sarah already had her phone out. "I'll call it in. LAPD and the FBI, both with Victor's people in the city. We treat this as priority 1 until we know otherwise." I was already moving toward the elevator. The next 40 minutes were the longest of my life, since the night I had driven to a construction site on Figueroa Street and found police cruisers instead of my son. I drove to the Marriott first. Emily was in the lobby, her arms wrapped around herself, her face the color of old paper, her eyes moving to every door that opened with an expression that collapsed slightly each time the person who entered was not Lucas. "He was in the room when I went to get coffee," she said, her voice shaking badly enough that some of the words lost their shape. 20 minutes. I was gone 20 minutes, and when I came back, "He's not in danger," I said with a certainty I was constructing deliberately brick by brick because Emily needed it, and I needed it, and one of us had to build it. "Victor doesn't know where you are. Nobody followed you here. Lucas is 14 years old, and he heard things last night, and he made a decision. What decision? Emily pressed both hands against her mouth, her knuckles white, her whole body rigid with the effort of not falling apart completely in the lobby of a Marriott. To find something, I said. I got back in the truck. Downtown Los Angeles is not a large area. The Carter Development Group headquarters building on Wilshire was 12 minutes away. But something else was closer. The old Carter Development satellite office on Figueroa Street, 3 blocks from the original construction site, a building that had sat mostly empty for 8 years, its lobby still bearing the company name on the glass beside the entrance. A building whose name Lucas had seen on every document Emily had shown him since last night. I pulled Ed outside. He was standing on the sidewalk in front of the building, with his backpack on and his hands in his jacket pockets looking up at the letters on the glass. Carter Development Group. He had his father's posture weight slightly forward chin, up the stance of someone measuring a thing before deciding how to approach it. I got out of the truck. Lucas turned when he heard the door. He did not look frightened or ashamed. He looked like someone who had made a deliberate choice and was prepared to account for it. I used Uber, he said before I could speak. I know I should have told my mom. I'm going to apologize to her. A pause. I just needed to see it, the name, in person. I stood on the sidewalk beside him and looked up at the letters on the glass. Carter Development Group, his father's name, his grandfather's company, the thing Alex had died trying to protect. I know, I said. Lucas looked at me. He really worked here. He ran the safety division, I said. He was the best engineer I ever saw. Lucas nodded slowly. His jaw was set in a way I recognized the particular set of someone absorbing something large and deciding where to put it. Frank's truck pulled up behind mine. He climbed out with a cardboard box under one arm, a standard archive box, the kind used for document storage, with a lid that had been taped shut and then opened and taped shut again multiple times over the years. Found this in the storage room off the lobby, Frank said. Old mail, never forwarded when they consolidated the offices. He set the box on the hood of my truck and lifted the lid. Inside were perhaps 30 envelopes, most of them clearly business correspondence. And at the bottom, beneath the business envelopes, was a white personal-sized envelope slightly yellowed with a first-class stamp that had been postmarked November 13th, 2009. The handwriting on the front was Alex's, addressed to Thomas Carter, personal. My hand hovered over it for a moment that seemed to occupy more time than a moment should contain. Frank put his hand briefly on my shoulder, one firm press, nothing more, and then stepped back. Lucas moved to stand beside me without being asked. He looked at the envelope with the same expression he had worn, looking up at the building, serious, deliberate, ready. Emily had arrived. She was standing at the edge of the sidewalk, her hand pressed flat against her sternum. I picked up the envelope. We opened this together, I said. We went inside. The lobby of the old satellite office was dim and smelled of dust and the particular staleness of a space that had been neither fully abandoned nor fully occupied for years. A security desk sat empty near the entrance. The Carter Development name was still on the wall behind it, in individual metal letters, some of them slightly askew. Frank found a room off the main corridor, a small conference room with a table and 4 chairs and a window that looked out onto the alley behind the building. He turned on the overhead light. We sat down. I placed the envelope in the center of the table. For a moment, nobody moved. Lucas sat with his hands flat on his thighs, watching the envelope with the focused stillness of someone who understood, without being told that whatever was inside it would change the shape of things. Emily sat with both arms crossed tightly over her chest, her chin down, her eyes bright and brimming. Frank sat with his hands wrapped around each other on the table in front of him, his head slightly bowed, the posture of a man in a church. I opened the envelope, a single sheet of paper folded twice, the same backward-leaning handwriting I had been reading for 15 years in engineering reports and birthday cards and the last pages of a composition notebook found behind a crumbling wall. I unfolded it, and I read my son's last letter aloud. Dad, if you're reading this, then you found what I left in the wall, which means you didn't stop looking. I knew you wouldn't. You never stop when something matters. I need you to know that I understood what I was walking into. I found the material substitutions 3 weeks ago, the falsified inspection certificates the week after. It took me another week to trace the payment routing to the shell entities, and when I did, I understood that whoever built this had planned it carefully and had help from inside the company. I don't know yet who on the inside, but I know it goes up high enough that I can't take it to the usual channels. I'm not afraid. I want you to know that first. I'm not afraid of what might happen tonight. I'm afraid of what happens if I don't finish this, because the workers on this site are using materials that will fail in a significant seismic event. And I cannot walk away from that, knowing what I know, and still call myself your son. You taught me that. Standing on job sites when I was 12 years old, watching you stop a pour because one of the laborers told you the aggregate mix was wrong. You didn't have to stop it. Nobody would have known, but you stopped it. You said a building is only as strong as what you put into it when nobody is watching. I put that in my memory, and I've carried it into every project I've ever worked on. I'm carrying it tonight. Emily is pregnant. We just found out. We haven't told anyone yet. I am going to be a father-dad, and I need you to know that whatever happens tonight, that is the most extraordinary thing I have ever heard in my life. And I am so grateful for it that it makes everything else, all of it, feel worth doing. If something happens to me, please find her. Please tell her that I loved her without reservation, and that I never once blamed her for anything. Tell her to raise our child, to ask questions, and to stand up when standing up is hard, and to understand that doing the right thing is not always the same as doing the easy thing. And Dad, please don't let them win. I know what it will cost you to keep going. I know what you'll lose. I know you'll probably lose things I can't even anticipate from where I'm standing right now. But I also know you, and I know that you have never in your life walked away from something that mattered because it was difficult. Don't start tonight. I love you. I love you more than I have ever known how to say, and I am sorry that I'm better at showing it in engineering logs than in conversation. I am your son, and I am proud of it, and I am not afraid. Your Alex. I set the letter down on the table. My hands were shaking so badly that the paper rattled against the surface, and I pressed both palms flat to stop it, and the pressure traveled up through my arms and into my chest and stayed there. Frank made a sound that was not a word. A low compressed exhalation that came from somewhere deep in his chest and took a long time to finish. His shoulders were shaking. He turned his face away from the table and pressed the back of his fist against his mouth and held it there. Emily had stopped trying to hold herself together. She was crying openly, both hands pressed flat against her cheeks, her breath coming in the broken, effortful rhythm of someone who has been holding something back for a very long time and has finally, with permission, let it go. He knew, she kept saying, her voice barely audible between the tears. He knew about the baby. He knew. Lucas was very still. He was not crying. He was sitting with his back straight and his hands flat on his thighs, looking at the letter with an expression that was too complex and too serious for 14 years. And also, I understood, entirely appropriate for who he was and who he was going to become. After a long moment, he reached out and touched the edge of the paper with 2 fingers, not picking it up, just touching it, the way you touch something that belongs to you, but that you are not yet ready to fully claim. He sounds like someone I would have liked, Lucas said quietly. My throat closed completely. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. He would have liked you more, I said. My phone rang. Sarah. The FBI just signed the arrest warrant, she said, for Victor Harrison and Martin Shaw. Victor is at the Langham. They're moving on him now. A pause, and in the pause I could hear something in her voice that I had not heard before. Not quite relief, but the particular quality of a person watching something long overdue finally arrive. Thomas, it's done. We have enough. It's done. I looked at the letter on the table. I looked at Emily, who was wiping her face with the back of her hand and almost laughing through what remained of the tears. I looked at Frank, who had turned back to the table and was sitting with his eyes red and his chin up and his hands steady again. I looked at Lucas, who was looking back at me with Alex's eyes. Tell me when he's in custody, I said. I set the phone down. Outside the window, Los Angeles was doing what Los Angeles always does, moving in different, vast, alive, and in a small conference room, off a dim corridor, in a building that still carried my son's name on its walls. 4 people sat around a table with a single sheet of paper between them and waited for the world to catch up with the truth. Sarah called back at 11:47 in the morning. Victor Harrison is in custody, she said. Langham, Huntington, Pasadena. He was in his suite when the agents arrived. He asked for his lawyers before they finished reading him his rights. A pause. He was wearing a suit. He had his briefcase. He looked like a man who had a 10 o'clock meeting somewhere. I was still sitting at the table in the old conference room with Alex's letter in front of me. Martin Shaw, I asked. Called the FBI New York field office 40 minutes ago, Sarah said. Voluntary surrender. He's there now giving his statement. Her voice carried something in it, not quite satisfaction, the more complicated thing that comes when something long overdue finally arrives and turns out to be exactly as heavy as you expected. Thomas, under California Penal Code Section 187, murder has no statute of limitations. The conspiracy charges run concurrently under federal law because the fraud crossed state lines between California and New York. Victor Harrison is looking at the rest of his life. I set the phone face down on the table. Emily made a sound that started as something controlled and became something else entirely. A long, unraveling exhale that had 15 years of compressed silence behind it. She pressed both hands over her face and her shoulders shook, and she did not try to stop any of it. Frank reached across the table and put his hand over hers. His palm was calloused and rough and enormous over her small hands, and he left it there and did not say anything, and that was exactly right. Lucas watched his mother with an expression that was fiercely protective and very young, at the same time the expression of a 14-year-old boy who wanted to fix something and understood for the first time that some things are not fixed but survived. He got up from his chair and went around the table and sat down beside Emily and put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him and kept crying. I picked up the phone and called Gerald. Issue a press statement, I said. Full disclosure. The arrest of Victor Harrison on charges connected to the death of Alex Carter in 2009, the exoneration of Richard Wilson on the financial misappropriation charges from the same period, and the company's intention to cooperate fully with all federal and state investigations going forward. I paused. Lead with Richard Wilson's name. His name goes first. Yes, sir, Gerald said. His voice was rougher than usual. He had been with Carter Development for 19 years. He had known Richard Wilson. I walked out into the corridor. The hallway was dim and quiet, the same dusty quiet it had always been, and I stood in it and looked at the wall where the ventilation grate had rusted slightly at the corners and the baseboards had separated from the floor, and thought about the fact that this building had been standing here the whole time, holding its silence, holding its emptiness, holding a box of old mail that nobody had thought to forward waiting, as buildings do, indifferent and patient for whatever came next. Sarah appeared at the end of the corridor. She walked toward me with her hands in the pockets of her jacket and stopped a few feet away, and looked at me with those precise, evaluating eyes that had seen through me on the first day. Richard Wilson's record is officially cleared, she said. The DA's office is issuing a formal statement this afternoon. Posthumous exoneration. His name goes into the public record as a man who was framed. She paused. It took 15 years, but it's done. My eyes burned. I pressed the back of my hand against them and held it there for a moment. He tried to tell me, I said. Right at the beginning, he told me someone had built the evidence against him. I believed the accountants. You believed what you were given, Sarah said. Victor built it to be believed. That's what made him dangerous. She tilted her head slightly. You found it anyway. 15 years later, you found it anyway. I looked down at the letter in my hand. Alex's handwriting. The backward-leaning script I had watched develop from a child's uncertain printing into an engineer's precise notation over 32 years. Don't let them win. I had not let them win. I went back into the conference room. Emily had stopped crying and was sitting with her hands flat on the table in front of her, and her eyes still red, but her chin up and her breathing steady. The posture of a woman who had come through something and intended to remain standing on the other side of it. Lucas was beside her. When I came back in, he looked at me directly. Is it over? He asked. I sat down across from them. The part that needed to end, I said yes. Lucas held my gaze for a moment. Then he nodded the same single deliberate nod he had given me in the hotel room when I had promised him I would find the truth. The nod of a boy who had decided to trust something and was confirming that the trust had been warranted. Frank stood up from his chair and straightened his jacket, an old reflex, the kind of thing a man does when he is trying to compose himself back into his normal shape after something has temporarily altered it. Well, he said in a voice that was rough and low and almost steady, somebody ought to get some lunch. Emily laughed. It came out sudden and genuine and slightly broken at the edges, the laugh of someone who had not expected to laugh at today and found it arriving anyway, and Lucas laughed too, shorter. Surprised, and the sound of it moved through the dim little conference room like light through a window that had been painted over for a long time. I looked at Alex's letter on the table one more time, then I folded it carefully twice and tucked it into my jacket beside Richard's letter and the page from Carol's notebook. all three of them together where they belonged. 3 pieces of paper, 3 people who had tried to reach me across 15 years of silence. I had finally heard them. "Lunch," I said. "Yes, let's do that." 6 months later. April in Los Angeles is the month when the city almost remembers how to be gentle. The Santa Ana winds have not yet arrived to turn everything brittle and dry, and the marine layer comes in off the Pacific in the mornings and softens the light before the afternoon burns it away. It is the best month in a city that does not often get credit for having good months, and on the morning of the 12th, the light coming through the windows of the Carter Development Conference Center on Figueroa Street was the particular gold of a California spring that makes everything look slightly more significant than it already is. The Alex Carter Foundation held its inaugural ceremony at 10 o'clock in the morning. 230 people attended, construction workers and their families, safety inspectors, engineers from firms across Southern California who had worked alongside Alex or known him by reputation, or simply read about what had happened, and understood that it could have happened to anyone on any job site that had cut the wrong corners at the wrong time. 3 representatives from the California Division of Occupational Safety and Health, 2 members of the Los Angeles City Council, 1 federal prosecutor from the case against Victor Harrison, who was currently awaiting trial in a federal detention facility in downtown Los Angeles, and whose lawyers had filed 14 motions in 6 months, each of which had been denied. Martin Shaw had pleaded guilty in February. He was serving 18 months in a minimum security federal facility in New Jersey. He had sent me a letter 3 weeks after his guilty plea. I read it once and placed it in the same drawer as Richard's letter and Alex's letter and the page from Carol Marsh's notebook. I had not yet decided what to do with the fact that I understood Martin Shaw's reasons without being able to forgive them, that I suspected was going to take longer than 6 months. Frank Delgado spoke first. He stood at the podium in a collared shirt and a jacket that did not quite fit across the shoulders, the jacket of a man who did not often need one, and he held both sides of the podium with his calloused hands and looked out at 230 people and began to speak without notes. He talked about the night of November 14th, 2009. He talked about what he had seen and what he had done and what he had failed to do. His voice broke twice, once when he described the moment he had filed the incident report, and once when he said Alex Carter's name aloud for the first time in front of a room full of people who had come specifically to hear it. Each time his voice broke, he stopped, gripped the podium harder, and continued. He did not apologize for the breaks. He just kept going. When he finished, the room was very quiet for a moment. Then someone began to applaud, and then everyone's did, and Frank stood at the podium looking slightly stunned, as though the sound was not something he had expected and did not quite know how to receive. Emily caught my eye across the room and held it for a moment. No words. But the thing that passed between us in that moment was something that had not been possible 6 months ago. Not quite forgiveness, because forgiveness implied a transaction, and what had happened between us was more complicated than a transaction, but something adjacent to it. The recognition of 2 people who had both loved the same man and both lost him and both survived the losing, and who had decided without discussing it directly that surviving it separately was harder than surviving it together. Lucas had grown, I thought. Not physically, though, that too, but in some less measurable way. He stood differently than he had in October, with more weight in his feet, as though the ground beneath him had become more reliable. He was wearing a tie for the first time. He had tied it himself badly, and Emily had straightened it before they left. And now it sat slightly off-center in a way that was entirely correct for a 14-year-old boy at his father's memorial foundation, and entirely perfect. Sarah Bennett arrived late, slipping in through the side door 20 minutes after the ceremony began, still in her work jacket, her phone visible in her breast pocket. She found me near the back of the room and stood beside me without announcing herself, the way a person does who understands that their presence is enough and explanation is unnecessary. "How's the case?" I asked quietly. "Moving," she said. "Slowly, the way federal cases move, but moving." A brief pause. "The civil lawsuit collapsed in March. Victor's attorneys withdrew it. Turns out it's difficult to maintain a claim of intellectual property theft when the defendant's deceased son has a dated engineering log that predates your client's patent application by 3 years." She looked at the front of the room, where Frank was returning to his seat, to a scattering of continued applause. "He's going to prison, Thomas. It's going to take 2 years to get there, but it's going to happen." I nodded. I stepped up to the podium when Sarah introduced me. She had insisted on making the introduction, and I had not argued because there were certain things you did not argue about with Sarah Bennett. And I looked out at the room and felt for the first time in 6 months or 15 years genuinely uncertain about what I was about to say. I had written remarks. They were in my jacket pocket. I did not take them out. My son Alex once told me, I said, that a building is only as strong as what you put into it when nobody is watching. I paused. I was talking about concrete and steel. I was talking about aggregate mix ratios and load-bearing specifications, and the kind of details that never appear in the final photographs, but determine whether a structure stands or falls when something tests it. Another pause shorter. But I was also talking about us, about what we owe each other when the job is hard and the shortcut is available, and nobody would know the difference if we took it. I looked at Frank, who was sitting in the front row, with his hands on his knees and his chin up. Alex Carter knew the difference, I said. And because he knew it, and because he acted on it even when it cost him everything, we know the truth today. The Alex Carter Foundation exists to support the people who do what Alex did, who look at what is wrong and report it, who carry the weight of knowing something that others would prefer to remain unknown, who understand that doing the right thing is not always the same as doing the safe thing, and who do it anyway. I stopped. I looked at Lucas, who was standing beside Emily near the window, with the slightly too long tie and the growing into himself posture and the eyes I had seen every day for 60 years in a different face. "That's all," I said. "Thank you for being here." The applause began again. I stepped away from the podium and walked toward the window where Lucas was standing, and Lucas turned when he heard me coming, and we stood side by side, looking out at Figueroa Street in the April morning light. "Your father would have hated this much attention," I said. Lucas almost smiled. "Mom said the same thing. She's right." I looked out at the street. A construction crew was working on the building across the way, a scaffold going up. Workers in orange vests moving along the levels with the particular unhurried efficiency of people who know their work and trust their equipment. I watched them for a moment. Then I felt Lucas's hand briefly lightly on my arm. I looked down. Lucas was not looking at me. He was looking out at the construction crew across the street, watching the scaffold go up. His expression serious and thoughtful, and very young, and somehow already underneath all of that, the beginning of someone. I looked back out at the street. The scaffold was going up clean and true. Each level locked before the next, was added every connection, checked the whole structure rising exactly as it should. Strong in the places that mattered, patient in the places that required patience, built the right way by people who understood that the way you build a thing is the thing itself. For the first time in 15 years, I smiled. Not the careful, controlled expression I had used at board meetings for a decade and a half. Not the performance of composure I had learned to maintain in public after Alex died. Something real and involuntary, and slightly surprised by itself. The smile of a man who has arrived somewhere he was not certain he would reach and finds it to be exactly what he needed it to be. I reached into my jacket pocket. 3 pieces of paper folded, worn soft at the creases. I did not take them out. I simply rested my hand against them, through the fabric, against Richard's words and Carol's record and Alex's voice, and stood in the April light beside my grandson and watched something being built. I set out to find the truth, I thought, and somewhere along the way, I found something I did not know I was looking for. I found my son again, and I found his son. And maybe standing here in the light on a street that still carries the name of what Alex built, watching a scaffold go up, clean and true across the way, maybe that was what Alex wanted all along. Don't let them win. I didn't, son. I didn't. I spent 15 years believing silence was survival. I was wrong. This is a family story about what happens when greed reaches inside the people you trust most. Family betrayal does not announce itself. It moves quietly through paperwork and handshakes and carefully constructed lies until the damage is done and the door is closed. Here is what I know. Now, truth is more patient than evil. Evil rushes, truth waits. And when it finally arrives, it arrives with everything. I built a company for 35 years and did not know how to build a conversation with the people standing beside me. Do not be like me. Do not let pride become the wall between you and the ones you love. Say what needs to be said today, not 15 years from now. In the darkest months of this journey, I held on to one belief, that God does not allow truth to stay buried forever. This family betrayal cost me more than I can name, but this family story gave me back my son's voice and his son's eyes. If this story reached you, leave a comment. Your words matter more than you know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Revenge Dad, because the stories that deserve to be told are just beginning. Thank you for staying until the very end. The stories on this channel contain fictional elements constructed for the purpose of entertainment and reflection. If this content is not for you, we respect that completely. Please feel free to explore other content that better suits you. And subscribe to Revenge Dad, because family stories like this, one deserve to be heard.